The air shimmered with an ancient dread, cold despite the rising sun. It wasn't the chill of a coming storm, but the icy whisper of fate, a predatory sound that always found Elara. Even in her deepest dreams, a golden-eyed beast haunted the edges, his presence a suffocating weight that promised a bond. Yes, but also an inescapable cage. Every morning, she would wake with a gasp, the phantom taste of ash on her tongue, because destiny, for her, felt less like a blessing and more like a sentence. Her reality was a delicate tapestry woven with polite smiles and unspoken rules. She was Lady Elara of the Silverwood Pack, daughter of Lord Valerius, the renowned diplomat. Her days were a quiet ballet of propriety, each movement rehearsed, each emotion meticulously hidden. She was the calm one, the compliant one, utterly unlike her twin sister Seraphina. Seraphina was the glittering star, the audacious beauty, the chosen one, the fated mate to Alpha Jax, the savage alpha of the Bloodmoon Clan. Elara, meanwhile, was the shadow, the safe secret. She had always kept her true self, a wild, rebellious spirit, locked away deep inside, because revealing it felt like a betrayal of everything her father held dear, everything that ensured their fragile peace. In fact, the thought of Alpha Jax sent shivers down her spine, chilling her to the bone. They called him Savage, a man rumored to be more beast than wolf, his clan steeped in brutal traditions. He was the thunder in the distant mountains, a force that Elara's refined world tried desperately to ignore. Yet, Seraphina was drawn to him like a moth to a flame, her dazzling smile concealing an ambition that sometimes made Elara's skin crawl. Had fate truly chosen this powerful, dangerous man for her sister, or was there a darker current pulling them all into a maelstrom? As a result, Elara often questioned the very concept of fate. Was it a benevolent hand guiding one to happiness, or a cruel puppeteer forcing lives into predetermined, agonizing roles? She'd seen what unbridled ambition could do, how it twisted even the most beautiful intentions. She'd quietly witnessed the calculating glint in Seraphina's eyes when she spoke of the power being Luna would bring, a gleam that had nothing to do with love. Could such a profound bond be built on such cold desire? This silent observation was an open loop in Elara's mind, a question that haunted her nights. More importantly, for Elara, the looming claiming ceremony felt less like a celebration and more like a slow descent into an abyss. She wasn't the fated one, but she was inextricably linked to it, bound by blood to a twin whose choices felt increasingly unsettling. She had learned to sacrifice her own desires, her own identity, for the greater good because that was her role. But what if the greater good was built on a foundation of deception? What if the fated path led not to peace, but to something far more terrifying? Even so, a curious longing stirred within her, a hunger for a freedom she couldn't name, a world where her spirit wasn't a burden but a strength. She pictured the untamed forests that bordered the Bloodmoon territory, raw and wild, calling to something deep within her. She didn't know what scared her more, the whispers of inevitable war should the fated bond be broken, or the suffocating certainty of her own suppressed existence within the gilded cage of her diplomatic life. Her heart pounded, a frantic bird seeking escape, unknowingly drawn towards the storm that was about to break. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about the unraveling of destinies and the terrifying truth hiding just beneath the surface. Panic flared like a wildfire, scorching the edges of Elara's composure. Her breath hitched, thin as a ghost's whisper, because in the opulent, stifling silence of her Silverwood Pack chambers, the mirror reflected not just her image, but a lie. She was practicing her demure smile, the one her diplomat father adored, the one that masked a spirit as wild as the untamed forest. Today, it felt like a gag. "Perfect, Elara," her father, Lord Valerius, murmured, his voice a silken thread weaving through the heavy air. "So unlike your sister, so compliant." A cold weight settled in her chest. Compliance was her gilded cage, beautiful yet suffocating. She smoothed the silk of her gown, its exquisite embroidery feeling like chains. Not only that, but the air buzzed with whispers of the Bloodmoon Clan's impending arrival for the claiming ceremony. Fear slithered through the gossip, because Alpha Jax was a name spoken with bated breath, rumored to be more beast than man. He was the savage Alpha. Rory, her twin, was meant to meet him. Rory should be here, Elara finally ventured, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Her internal monologue raged. "Where are you, Rory? Don't you see the abyss we stand on?" She didn't know what scared her more, Jax's rumored brutality or the suffocating weight of her own suppressed identity. With every heartbeat, the tension in the room grew thicker. Lord Valerius chuckled, a brittle sound. Rory has always been impetuous, but fear not, she understands her duty. He paused, his gaze sharp, assessing. This alliance is paramount. It guarantees peace for our people because the Bloodmoon Clan's power is unmatched. Suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed from outside, followed by frantic shouts. The elegant facade of their world shattered like thin glass. Lord Valerius's face paled, the carefully constructed calm crumbling. He didn't need to say it. Something was terribly wrong. As if summoned by her deepest anxieties, a frantic knock pounded on the door. Before she could move, the heavy oak door burst open, revealing a terrified servant, her eyes wide as saucers. "Lord Valerius, Lady Seraphina, she's gone, vanished." The words ripped through the carefully curated quiet of the enclave, leaving a gaping wound. Lord Valerius's jaw tightened, his controlled composure finally snapping. What followed was pandemonium. "Gone?" he roared, his voice losing its diplomatic polish, echoing off the high ceilings. "Impossible! The Bloodmoon delegation is practically at our gates." Not only that, but frantic messengers poured into the great hall, their reports painting a grim picture. Jax and his formidable warriors were indeed on their way, their intent clear: claim his fated mate or wage war. Elara felt it, clear as day, the icy tendrils of panic gripping her heart. She searched for any sign of her twin. "Rory, where are you? Why now?" Her mind raced, because she knew her sister's rebellious streak, but this was beyond reckless. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of fear and impending doom. A profound terror stole her breath. The silence roared, amplifying the thumping in her chest. Lord Valerius, usually the picture of collected statesmanship, looked like a man drowning. He paced frantically, muttering about bloody war and sacred bonds. Then, his gaze, wild and desperate, landed on Elara. In that moment, a chilling understanding dawned. Her world tilted. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the terrible conclusion. He grabbed her arms, his grip surprisingly strong, almost painful. "You will take her place, Elara." His voice, raw and strained, was barely a whisper. "You are identical. It's the only way to prevent a bloodbath, because our people will be slaughtered." Her breath caught, and just like that, everything changed. Her heart skipped a beat, then pounded like a war drum against her ribs. "No," Elara whispered, the word barely audible. It was a plea, a protest, a desperate cling to the last threads of her own life. But then, her father's eyes, usually calculating, now held a raw paternal terror that cut through her. He pointed to the window, where the distant, disciplined thud of war drums resonated, growing louder with every passing second. "Do you hear that, Elara?" he rasped, his voice rough. "That is the sound of our annihilation. Thousands will die if you refuse. Not only that, but our clan will be extinguished." He painted a vivid picture. Innocent lives extinguished, homes reduced to ash, the very ground they stood on soaked in blood. His words were a heavy cloak of guilt, wrapping around her, suffocating her protests. "Your sister's recklessness has put us all in this impossible position, and because of that, you are our only hope." Elara's mind raced, a frantic hummingbird beating against a closed window. Could she really condemn her entire clan to save herself? Her internal struggle was a tempest. She remembered the stories of Jax, the savage alpha, a man known for his brutality and rumored to be more beast than man. Living with him was a sentence, but the alternative was mass slaughter. The space between them burned with the weight of his demand. Deep down, she knew the truth. There was no other choice. She lowered her gaze, defeat washing over her. I will do it, she choked out, the words tasting like ash. A beat later, her father sagged in relief, a silent acknowledgement of the monumental sacrifice she was making. He looked away, unable to meet her eyes, perhaps ashamed of what he was asking. Maybe it was fate, after all, to be caught in this web of duty and dread. Soon after, she found herself draped in Seraphina's ornate claiming gown, the rich velvet feeling like a shroud, its beauty a mockery of her despair. The silver threads, meant to gleam under moonlit celebrations, felt like cold shackles on her skin. As the wind shifted, carrying the faint primal scent of untamed wolf, a guttural, bone-deep howl echoed from the distant mountains. It was closer now, much closer. The Bloodmoon Clan had arrived. The air crackled with anticipation, thick and heavy like the humid jungle mist. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She stood, dressed in Seraphina's ornate claiming gown, on a raised stone dais. The Bloodmoon Clan gathered before her, a sea of stern faces and piercing golden eyes that seemed to strip away her meticulously crafted composure. She could feel their wary gazes, sharp and assessing, because they knew she wasn't the one they expected. Then a hush fell, deeper than the forest at midnight. Alpha Jax entered. He wasn't just a man, he was a force of nature, all raw power and barely leashed savagery. His towering frame filled the entrance, casting long shadows. Not only that, but his scent, a potent mix of pine, rain, and something undeniably wild, hit her first, overwhelming her senses. His eyes, like chips of glacial ice, found hers across the clearing. They were devoid of warmth, filled instead with a predator's calculating intensity. He didn't just look at her. He saw her, stripping away the illusion faster than a wolf sheds its winter coat. In that moment, Elara knew he recognized the deception. A shiver, cold and sharp, traced its way down her spine. He moved with a lethal grace, each step deliberate, resonating with untamed strength. The clan elders, their faces grim, stood silently beside him, their presence a solemn weight. Jax reached the dais, his hand, strong and calloused, snaking out to grip her arm. His touch was cold, devoid of tenderness, a possessive claim. He leaned in, his voice a low, guttural growl that vibrated through her very bones. "You are not her," he murmured, his gaze cutting. It was a statement, not a question, a brutal truth thrown between them. The claiming ritual began. It was swift, ancient, and utterly devoid of affection. His fangs, sharp and gleaming, grazed her neck before sinking in with a jolt of pain that made her gasp. It was a mark of ownership, of alliance, not of love. She didn't know what scared her more, the bite itself, or the cold, hard realization that his fury was barely contained. After that, he pulled back, his eyes still locked on hers, a silent promise of future torment. "Take her to the fortress," he commanded, his voice raw. "She is mine, for now." The words were a sentence, spoken to the chilling backdrop of the clan's silent, watchful eyes. What followed was a journey into the heart of a nightmare. Elara was escorted by two grim-faced Bloodmoon warriors, their silence more menacing than any threat. The world outside the Silverwood enclave was harsh, untamed. Jagged mountain peaks scraped the sky, their shadows falling like a shroud over ancient whispering forests. Every gust of wind carried the scent of pine and wildness, alien to her accustomed, cultivated gardens. She was being pulled deeper into a world where survival was primal, where rules were carved in bone, not written on parchment. She looked back once, at the distant flicker of lights from her father's territory, a beacon of her old life rapidly receding. A bitter pang shot through her because that life, for all its gilded restraints, now seemed like a distant dream. She was no longer Elara, diplomat's daughter. She was simply the substitute, a pawn in a brutal game. Her stomach churned, not just from the rough ride, but from the cold dread coiling within her. Jax's eyes, cold as winter ice, haunted her. She knew he despised her, and that knowledge was a constant, gnawing fear. Meanwhile, her mind raced, attempting to find a foothold in this new, terrifying reality. She tried to recall every whispered rumor, every cautionary tale about the savage Alpha. His reputation wasn't just hearsay, it was a living, breathing entity. They said he broke those who defied him, that his patience was as thin as morning mist. She clutched her hands together, nails digging into her palms. Her immediate goal was clear: survive. And to survive, she had to play her part, be the docile replacement they expected, no matter how much it chafed against the fierce spirit she'd always hidden. This grim determination was a flickering flame in the encroaching darkness. The air grew colder as they ascended, the dense forest giving way to a more barren, rockier terrain. Soon after, the silhouette of the Bloodmoon fortress loomed against the darkening sky. It was a massive, imposing structure, seemingly carved directly from the mountain itself, its walls thick and unyielding. It was a lair, not a home. As a result, a fresh wave of despair washed over her. This was her prison. This was her new reality. The massive gates, crafted from ancient iron-bound timber, groaned open with a chilling sound, swallowing Elara whole. Inside, the Bloodmoon fortress was a labyrinth of torchlit corridors, rough-hewn stone, and the pervasive scent of raw earth and wolf. The air was thick with the silent scrutiny of warriors, their eyes, many glowing with an inner light, following her every move. She felt like prey in a den of predators, her senses overwhelmed. This place hummed with a primal energy, a stark contrast to the hushed, polite artifice of her father's home. She was led to chambers that, while lavish, felt utterly devoid of warmth. Rich furs covered the stone floor, heavy tapestries adorned the walls, but it felt less like an invitation and more like a carefully prepared cage. The very air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. Just like that, the finality of her situation hit her with the force of a physical blow. There was no going back. Before she could even fully absorb her surroundings, the door swung open. Jax stood there, filling the entrance, his presence dominating the space. His eyes, golden now in the torchlight, burned with an intensity that made her instinctively flinch. He walked into the room, slowly, deliberately, his movements radiating controlled power. He was not just physically imposing, his aura was a palpable force. He stopped before her, his gaze sweeping over her face, then lingered on the mark he'd given her. Elara felt it, clear as day, the heat and ghost of pain at the bite site. "You understand your position, girl?" His voice was a low rumble, laced with warning. "You are here because of your sister's treachery. You are a debt paid, nothing more. And because of that, you will remain silent. You will be seen, not heard." He didn't need to specify. His tone, his posture, the raw fury simmering beneath his words, made it abundantly clear she was a prisoner, a temporary solution, and that any misstep would be met with swift, brutal consequences. He watched her, waiting for a reaction, challenging her. Elara met his gaze, her own unwavering despite the frantic beating of her heart. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. "I understand," she managed, her voice steadier than she thought possible. She would play her part because her clan's safety depended on it. But then, as he turned to leave, he paused. "Do not forget," he growled, looking back over his shoulder, his eyes glinting. "You are not her, and you are not mine." With that, he was gone, leaving her alone in the chilling silence, the echoes of his words sealing her fate. Days bled into weeks within the stone heart of the Bloodmoon fortress. Elara moved through the sprawling stronghold like a ghost, an uninvited guest. Her chambers, while luxurious with their heavy furs and intricate carvings, felt more like a beautifully decorated cage. Every morning, the cold mountain air that seeped through the thick walls served as a stark reminder of her new, brutal reality. She spent hours by the narrow, high window, watching the clan below, absorbing their rhythms. She observed the warriors, muscled and fierce, training in the courtyard, their growls echoing off the ancient stone. They moved with a raw power that both terrified and fascinated her. She saw the she-wolves, equally strong, managing the clan's affairs, their gazes often flicking to her with thinly veiled suspicion. What followed was a quiet, relentless study. She noticed the intricate hierarchy, the unspoken rules, the deep, almost primal loyalty they held for Jax. Still, they were wary of her, the fated mate who was not the true fated mate. Their eyes, often golden like their alphas, held a mixture of grief for their perceived betrayal and sharp curiosity. She felt the weight of their scrutiny every time she stepped outside her room. Because of that, she clung to her demure facade, her polite smiles, the very things that had stifled her for so long. She didn't know what else to do. More importantly, she watched Jax. She saw him from a distance in the training grounds, his movements fluid and deadly. She saw him in the great hall, holding court, his voice a low rumble that commanded instant obedience. He was a force of absolute authority, yes, but beneath the savagery, she began to see fleeting glimpses of something else. In his eyes, when he thought no one was looking, there was a deep-seated pain, a profound weariness. She'd caught him once staring out at the mountains, his posture slumped just slightly, a vulnerable crack in his impenetrable armor. He quickly masked it, but the image lingered in her mind. It was unsettling. It was compelling. Her own emotions were a tumultuous sea. Fear was a constant companion, a dull ache beneath her ribs. But mixed with it was an undeniable, almost morbid curiosity. She wanted to understand this man, this world. Maybe it was fate that brought her here, because it was forcing her to see beyond the surface, to strip away her own preconceptions. She also felt a strange, burgeoning sense of connection to the raw, untamed landscape outside the fortress walls. It called to something deep within her, a wildness she'd always suppressed. One cold afternoon, while observing a group of younger warriors sparring, one stumbled, nearly falling directly into a sharp blade. Her breath caught. As if pulled by a string, Elara subtly shifted her weight, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement that allowed the warrior to regain his balance, averting a nasty injury. Jax, standing nearby, his eyes sharp, caught the interaction. His gaze lingered on her for a fraction longer than usual, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, before he dismissed the warrior with a curt nod. The encounter was minor, but it left her feeling exposed, yet strangely exhilarated. She knew then that her careful disguise was not as impenetrable as she'd thought, and that Jax saw far more than she wanted him to. The air in the great hall was thick with the scent of roasted meat and the boisterous laughter of Bloodmoon warriors. Elara sat at the long table, a solitary island in a sea of raw vitality. She picked at her food, trying to appear unobtrusive, but every sense was heightened because the sheer difference from her old life was overwhelming. Here, politeness was weakness. Strength was everything. She was learning, slowly, to navigate the subtle currents of this new, wild society. She noticed the way the warriors spoke, terse and direct, their loyalty fiercely earned. Suddenly, a large, burly warrior named Kalen, his face scarred and his eyes holding a challenging glint, leaned across the table. His voice, loud enough for those nearby to hear, was laced with thinly veiled contempt. The Silverwood dove seems to be struggling with our simple fare, Alpha. Perhaps she misses the perfumed pastries of her proper home, or perhaps the true Luna simply preferred to fly free. His words were a direct jab, a test, a public humiliation delivered with a sneer that twisted his scarred lip. A hush fell over the immediate area, all eyes turning to Elara, then to Jax. A cold rage, sharp and unexpected, ignited deep within Elara. For years she had suppressed her spirit, bending to her father's will, allowing Seraphina's capriciousness to define her. But now, confronted by this blatant disrespect, something snapped. Her heart pounded so loudly, she thought everyone in the hall must hear it. Instead of shrinking back, instead of offering a demure, apologetic smile, she slowly, deliberately, met Kaylin's gaze. Her spine straightened, an almost imperceptible shift that held the power of an unspoken challenge. "Indeed," Elara replied. Her voice, though soft, carried a surprising steel. She didn't know where the strength came from. "The pastries were excellent, but I find the sustenance here more real." She paused, letting her gaze sweep briefly over the scarred warrior's face, then flicked to Jax, her words a subtle nod to the harsh authenticity of his world. "And as for flying free," she continued, her voice gaining a quiet confidence, "sometimes the greatest courage is found not in flight, but in standing one's ground, because true strength lies not in avoidance, but in facing what is necessary." Her voice trembled slightly, but the words were out. Silence. The warrior's sneer faltered. Jax, who had been watching the exchange with an almost predatory intensity, leaned back in his seat, a flicker of something akin to grudging respect in his golden eyes. He gave a curt nod, a silent dismissal to Kaylin, who grumbled and turned away. Elara felt a rush of adrenaline, a dangerous thrill. She had risked a subtle act of defiance, and it had paid off. She felt a shift within her, a tiny crack in the gilded cage. This place, this savage world, was forcing her to be more than just a placeholder. It was forcing her to be. That night, a summons arrived. Jax required her presence in his private study. Her heart hammered with a new, unfamiliar rhythm. It wasn't purely fear anymore. It was anticipation, a nervous excitement mixed with dread. She understood the true meaning of the summons. Not a request, but a command, and certainly not a social call. This was her first real test. The study was a stark contrast to the clan's rough communal areas. Books lined shelves carved into the stone walls, maps unfurled across a heavy oak table, and the air smelled of old paper, ink, and Jax's potent scent. He stood by the hearth, firelight dancing across the taut lines of his face, accentuating the shadows beneath his eyes. He didn't invite her to sit. He simply watched her approach, his gaze dissecting. Elara braced herself. "My father speaks highly of your diplomatic mind, Lady Elara," Jax began, his voice a low, even cadence that held a deceptive calmness. He picked up a quill, turning it slowly in his fingers. "He claims you possess a subtle understanding of influence. Is that so?" It was a trap, an attempt to gauge her intelligence, her ambition. He was probing, testing the limits of her subservience. "My father is a kind man," Elara replied, her voice steady, drawing on every lesson in politeness and deflection. She wouldn't overstate her abilities, nor would she diminish them. "He wishes for peace. I merely assist in that endeavor." She chose her words carefully, knowing the subtext was just as important as the spoken word. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a duel of wits. He watched her, a ghost of a smirk touching his lips. "And your sister, she also wished for peace?" The question was a sharp knife, delivered with chilling precision. It was meant to fluster her, to catch her off guard. But then, as the silence stretched, Elara realized his question wasn't just about Seraphina. It was about his own pain, his own bitter betrayal. His golden eyes, usually so cold, held a flicker of deep-seated hurt. "My sister," Elara responded, choosing her words with careful deliberation, "is complex." She met his gaze directly, allowing a hint of her own sorrow to show. Perhaps her understanding of peace was different from ours. Sometimes, what one believes to be destiny blinds them to true intentions because fate isn't always what it seems. Her words hung in the air, a subtle challenge, a question not just for Seraphina, but for him. She saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then a tightening of his jaw. Her defiance, wrapped in a diplomatic bow, had clearly hit a nerve. He put down the quill, his eyes never leaving hers. A fascinating perspective. His voice was low, almost a growl. "You are not what I expected, Lady Elara. You are more." He dismissed her with a wave of his hand. As Elara left, she felt his gaze on her back, a tangible weight. She had passed his test, but more importantly, she had started to unravel the mystery of the savage Alpha himself. This was just the beginning. The air in the fortress, once a suffocating weight, now hummed with a different kind of tension. Elara found herself increasingly drawn into the clan's daily rhythm, no longer just an observer, but a subtle participant. She began to offer quiet insights during their informal gatherings, suggestions gleaned from her diplomatic upbringing, yet framed in a way that resonated with their practical, results-driven nature. For instance, she proposed a new patrol route that utilized the higher mountain passes because it offered a better vantage point without direct confrontation. Her ideas, at first met with skepticism, slowly earned grudging nods of approval from a few of the senior warriors. As a result, Jax observed her more closely. His coldness, while still present, was now punctuated by fleeting glances that held something akin to reluctant curiosity. One morning, she saw him watching her as she helped an older she-wolf mend a torn hunting net, her fingers surprisingly adept. His gaze was intense, analytical, and for a split second, something akin to grudging respect flickered in his golden eyes. It was a small victory, but it meant the world. However, not everyone welcomed her growing presence. She noticed the lingering, unsettling glances from a few clan members, particularly those who had been close to Seraphina. Their whispers, low and venomous, sometimes reached her ears. The imposter. She stole what was hers. Elara dismissed them at first, because jealousy was a common beast. But then, she started to see faces she recognized from Seraphina's inner circle, wolves who had frequented their Silverwood home, supposedly loyal to her twin. She watched them now, their eyes too knowing, their smiles too thin. What if Seraphina wasn't just gone, but plotting? This thought sent a shiver of dread down her spine. The pressure was building, not just from within the clan, but from an unseen external threat. Her cautious optimism began to curdle into a creeping unease. She felt it, clear as day, the insidious coil of suspicion tightening around her. One evening, while walking through a rarely used corridor, she overheard hushed voices from a secluded alcove. A familiar, oily voice, one she recognized from Seraphina's retinue, was speaking in urgent whispers. "The Alpha will fall. Soon. Our Lady's plan is flawless." Elara froze, her heart hammering, her breath caught. The mention of Our Lady could only mean Seraphina. This wasn't mere jealousy. It was outright treason. The alarm howled through the fortress like a wounded beast, shattering the deceptive calm. Raiders from the Granite Fang clan, notorious for their hit-and-run tactics, were attacking the western perimeter. Chaos erupted. Warriors scrambled, their primal growls filling the air. Elara, caught in the panicked rush, was shoved towards the safer inner keep. But then, she saw him. Jax, leading the charge, a whirlwind of muscle and fury, but overwhelmed. A massive granite fang brute, camouflaged by the dim light, lunged from the shadows, aiming for his exposed flank. Without thinking, her body moved on instinct. Elara didn't hesitate. She grabbed a discarded spear, its weight surprisingly solid in her hands, and flung it with desperate force. It wasn't a perfect throw, but it struck the brute's shoulder, momentarily staggering him. Jax, sensing the opening, whirled and delivered a devastating blow. The granite fang fell. Jax turned, his golden eyes blazing, searching for his savior. They locked with Elara's. In that moment, the raw intensity of the battle faded, replaced by an electric charge that arced between them. He saw her, not as the diplomat's daughter, not as Seraphina's twin, but as her. As Elara. A fierce, powerful woman. The tension broke, not with relief, but with an overwhelming, unexpected desire that hit Elara like a physical blow. It was wild, untamed, a forbidden fire because they were not fated, yet it blazed brighter than any star. He was beside her in an instant, his large hand gripping her arm, his touch searing. "You," he rasped, his voice raw, his gaze locked on hers, predatory and hungry. Her breath hitched, the air thickened. With his scent in the air, a heady mix of sweat and wolf, Elara felt a yearning so potent it stole her breath. She saw it in his eyes, too. A mirroring hunger, tempered by torment. His hand moved, sliding to her neck, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin over her mark. "This changes nothing," he growled, the words harsh, a desperate attempt to push away the undeniable pull. "You are not my fated mate." But his eyes, dark with unspoken need, betrayed him. He pulled back abruptly, his jaw tight, leaving her trembling, the ghost of his touch burning on her skin. He turned and plunged back into the fray, leaving Elara reeling, a new, terrifying emotion warring with her fear. The external battle raged, but the true war had just begun within her heart. The battle subsided, leaving behind a grim aftermath of wounded warriors and a fortress smelling of blood and triumph. But for Elara, the lingering scent was not victory, but the burning echo of Jax's touch, the taste of forbidden desire. The encounter in the courtyard had shattered the fragile barrier between them, leaving her raw and exposed. Jax, on the other hand, had retreated into himself, his earlier volatility now replaced by an even deeper, more unsettling coldness. He avoided her gaze, his presence in the great hall a suffocating weight. This cold shoulder, however, fueled a new resolve within Elara. She couldn't ignore the cryptic whispers she'd overheard, especially not after the way Jax's fated mate had abandoned him. Her personal stakes were now higher. It wasn't just about survival, but about a complicated, perilous connection that defied all reason. Her heart ached with the knowledge that he still believed she was not his true mate, yet her soul answered to him. She had to know the truth about Seraphina, because something far more sinister was at play than a mere runaway bride. Driven by this need, Elara began to meticulously search the few belongings Seraphina had left behind in the Silverwood enclave, before her supposed flight. Her father had brought them over, a pathetic box of memories. Among the silks and trinkets, tucked away in a false bottom of a jewelry box, Elara found it, a small, intricately carved wooden bird, a symbol of the Shadowfang clan. Not only that, but wrapped around it was a faded, half-burnt parchment. It was a partial map, meticulously detailing the Bloodmoon fortress's defenses, with certain weak points circled in faded ink. Her breath hitched. A brutal realization crashed over her. This wasn't just a flight of fancy. This was a conspiracy. Seraphina hadn't fled out of fear or weakness. She had been plotting. The bird, the map, the whispers. It all clicked into place. Seraphina never loved Jax. She only wanted his power. Her sacrifice was actually her final, devastating act of betrayal. Elara felt a profound and chilling sorrow for the girl she thought was her twin. What's worse, her sister wasn't merely a runaway. She was a traitor, allied with a rival Alpha to assassinate Jax and seize his territory. The implications were catastrophic. This information could save the Bloodmoon Clan, but it could also brand Elara as complicit, destroy the fragile trust she had painstakingly built, and obliterate any chance of a future with Jax. She looked at the wooden bird, then at her own hand, still faintly trembling from Jax's touch. She had to tell him. But how could she convince him that the woman he was fated to was a viper, and the woman he scorned was his only hope? The air crackled with unspoken dangers, leading directly to the escalating storm that was about to break. The wooden bird, a cold, smooth sentinel in her palm, felt like a burning coal. Its intricate carving, a symbol of the Shadowfang clan, mocked the false innocence Seraphina had always projected. Elara's mind raced, because the cryptic whispers, the hushed meetings she'd overheard, it all coalesced around this damning piece of evidence. Seraphina hadn't just abandoned Jax. She had orchestrated a betrayal so deep, it threatened to unravel the very fabric of the Bloodmoon Clan. Driven by a desperate need for absolute certainty, Elara used the very skills her father had meticulously honed. She moved through the fortress like a phantom, observing, listening, piecing together fragments of overheard conversations. She focused on the few clan members who still held a veiled loyalty to Seraphina, those whose eyes held a flicker of deceit. She subtly tested them, dropping carefully worded questions, watching their reactions. She learned that Seraphina had maintained secret communications, not with her father, but with a network of discontented factions, all yearning for Bloodmoon territory. Not only that, but the whispers spoke of a planned coup, of Jax's downfall being imminent. The scale of the conspiracy was breathtaking, monstrous. The heartbreak over her sister's treachery was a physical ache, a raw wound. Her twin, her other half, was not a runaway bride, but a venomous viper poised to strike. What's worse, Elara now knew that Seraphina had never loved Jax. She had only desired his power, his territory. The sacred fated bond had been a mere stepping stone for her ambition. Elara felt it, clear as day, the profound shame and sorrow for her sister's twisted heart. As her wolf stirred, Elara realized her loyalty had irrevocably shifted. She no longer felt like a mere pawn, a coerced stand-in. This clan, harsh and wild as it was, had become a refuge, and Jax, for all his savagery and coldness, was a tormented man who deserved the truth. Her own life was intertwined with theirs now. She had to expose Seraphina. She had to protect Jax. This was no longer just about preventing a war. It was about saving the people she had unwillingly come to care for, and perhaps safeguarding the only man who had ever seen a glimpse of her true self. She held the wooden bird tighter, its edges biting into her palm, a physical reminder of the deadly game she was now fully immersed in. Her resolve hardened like mountain stone, leading directly to the ultimate gamble of her newfound desires. The air in Elara's chambers was thick with unspoken tension, more suffocating than any physical restraint. Days after the skirmish, Jax's coldness had intensified, a shield against the unsettling desire that now pulsed between them. He came to her room that night, not with a summons, but a silent, almost desperate presence, his eyes burning with an internal battle. He paced, restless and tormented, the scent of pine and raw fury clinging to him. He was fighting himself, fighting them. Elara watched him, her own heart a furious drum against her ribs. The anger at his dismissal of her warnings about Seraphina warred with the undeniable, scorching pull she felt towards him. She knew he was battling the betrayal of his fated mate, and because of that he couldn't allow himself to feel this wrong connection with her. "What do you want, Alpha?" Elara finally asked, her voice a little shaky but firm. The words hung in the air, weighted with everything left unsaid. He stopped, turning abruptly. "I want clarity," he growled, his voice rough. He closed the distance between them with 2 long strides, his large hands gripping her shoulders. His touch ignited a wildfire beneath her skin. His golden eyes, filled with a predatory intensity, devoured hers. This between us. It shouldn't exist. But it does, Elara whispered, defying him, defying fate itself. Her chest ached with the truth of it. She lifted a trembling hand, tracing the hard line of his jaw. His muscles tensed beneath her touch. The unspoken desires that had simmered for weeks, the raw, untamed passion that defied their forced union, erupted. He lowered his head, his lips finding hers in a hungry, desperate kiss that stole her breath. It was savage and tender all at once, a clash of fire and ice that melted into a searing heat. Her body arched into his, instinctively seeking the warmth, the power, the undeniable rightness of him. Every nerve ending sang. His growl, deep and primal, vibrated against her lips as his hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, cementing their forbidden connection. It wasn't gentle. It was raw, unbridled, an acknowledgement of the wildness in them both. In that moment, The world narrowed to just them, two lost souls finding solace in an illicit embrace. The mark on her neck tingled, not with pain, but with a strange resonance as if her soul answered his. Suddenly, a distant, piercing howl, ragged and desperate, ripped through the silence of the night, echoing through the fortress. It was an alarm, urgent and chilling. Jax pulled back, his breath ragged, his eyes still dark with desire, but now tinged with sharp awareness. The moment shattered, the raw passion replaced by a grim realization. The outside world was intruding. The cost of their forbidden passion was about to become terrifyingly clear. The haunting echo of the alarm howl lingered in the air, chilling her to the bone. Jax pulled away from her, his movements jerky, the animalistic intensity in his eyes replaced by a renewed vigilance. The weight of their stolen intimacy pressed down on them, heavy and dangerous. He quickly redonned his mask of cold authority, but Elara saw the subtle tremor in his hands, the lingering heat in his gaze. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice clipped, already moving towards the door. His dismissal felt like a physical blow, a harsh reminder of his mistrust. "Jax, wait!" Elara cried, her voice trembling with urgency. She rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "It's Seraphina. I know it. She's allied with Rorik of the Shadowfang clan. They're planning an attack, a full-scale invasion." She blurted out the words, clutching the wooden bird, proof in her trembling hand. "This is not just a raid, it's a betrayal." He stopped, his back to her. When he turned, his eyes were glacial, his jaw clenched tight. "My fated mate conspires with our enemies?" he sneered, a bitter laugh escaping him. "You truly expect me to believe such a convenient lie born from jealousy? You are her twin, remember? Perhaps you are more like her than you admit." His words were like daggers, piercing her heart, because he was too blinded by the deep wound of his perceived betrayal to see the truth right in front of him. The sting was far worse than any physical pain. "It's not a lie," Elara insisted, her voice rising, desperate. "I have proof. She left this behind, a Shadowfang symbol. And I overheard their plans, their whispers of a coup." She thrust the carved bird at him. He glanced at it, then back at her, his expression hardening. "A trinket," he dismissed, his voice devoid of emotion. "Easily planted. Go to your chambers, Elara. This is a warrior's concern." He walked out, leaving her standing alone, shattered. The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed the closure of his trust. Minutes later, the fortress erupted. The distant howl was quickly joined by others, a chorus of wild, aggressive cries. The ground vibrated beneath her feet as the sounds of battle, clashing steel, growls, the roar of invading wolves, erupted from the outer walls. Elara rushed to her window. Below, the courtyard was a maelstrom of fur and fury, Bloodmoon warriors battling desperately against the black-furred ranks of the Shadowfang clan. And there, leading the charge, was Rorik, a hulking brute, his eyes gleaming with ambition. Beside him, almost impossibly, was a figure in black, her face shadowed, but Elara recognized the defiant posture, the cruel curve of her smile. Seraphina. Her sacrifice was indeed her final act of betrayal. Elara felt it, clear as day, the crushing weight of knowing she was right, but dismissed. She was caught between a full-blown invasion and the stubborn disbelief of the man she was desperate to save. There was no turning back now. The air fractured with the shriek of tearing metal as the Bloodmoon fortress gates groaned, then splintered under the assault. Elara, pressed against the cold stone of her chamber wall, felt the vibrations rumble through her bones. The courtyard below was a swirling maelstrom of chaos, a canvas painted with the grim colors of war. Black fur and silver clashed in a brutal dance, the primal snarls of the Shadowfang clan echoing the desperate roars of the Bloodmoon warriors. This wasn't just a skirmish, it was a siege, a relentless, savage tide washing over their defenses. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm, because the raw, animalistic intensity of the battle was horrifying. She saw Jax, a whirlwind of muscle and fury, at the heart of the maelstrom. He moved with a devastating efficiency, a true alpha, but even his power seemed to be struggling against the sheer number of invaders. He roared commands, rallying his bleeding warriors, but their lines wavered. The sight twisted a knot in Elara's gut. Not only that, but her fear for herself was overshadowed by a fierce, unfamiliar need to protect him, to protect them. And then she saw her. Seraphina. Standing beside Rorik, a sinister smile gracing her lips, she looked almost regal, directing the Shadowfang warriors with chilling precision. Her twin, once familiar, was now a stranger, a viper in human form. The realization was a colder blow than any weapon. This is not just her ambition, Elara thought, a wave of nauseating clarity washing over her. This is a personal vendetta. What's worse, Seraphina's eyes, as they briefly met Elara's across the carnage, held a chilling triumph, a silent, "I told you so." It was a betrayal so profound it threatened to unravel Elara's very soul.
Rage, cold and pure, fueled Jax's every strike. He carved a path through the invading Shadowfang, each blow a testament to his fury. But their numbers seemed endless, like a dark tide engulfing his home. He heard the panicked shouts of his warriors, saw the fallen. His fated mate had abandoned him, and now her clan was at his throat. He saw Rorik, the hulking Shadowfang Alpha, grinning like a demon, coordinating the attack with cruel efficiency. This was no ordinary raid. This was calculated. As he spun to parry a blow, he caught a glimpse of Elara. She was no longer clinging to the wall, shrinking from the chaos. Instead, she had somehow acquired a discarded dagger, and she was moving with a raw, desperate ferocity he hadn't known she possessed, defending a wounded Bloodmoon warrior. Her eyes, usually so guarded, blazed with an untamed fire. She moved like a cornered wolf, swift and deadly. A flicker of disbelief, sharp and unsettling, cut through his battle haze. Who is she? Before he could process the thought, Rorik lunged, forcing Jax's full attention. The fight for his clan, for his very life, was paramount. He buried the unsettling image of Elara's unexpected ferocity deep, deep down, because there was no time for questions now. The immediate goal was survival. The fortress walls were breached. The inner keep was in danger. Every beat of his heart was a drum of impending defeat.
A brief, desperate lull settled over the ravaged courtyard, the sounds of battle momentarily muted by the thick, smoky air. Wounded warriors moaned, and the Bloodmoon Clan pulled back, attempting to consolidate their dwindling forces near the main keep. Elara, her hands slick with sweat, the dagger still clutched tight, felt a raw ache in her muscles, a testament to her unexpected foray into battle. She saw Jax, his fur matted with grime and blood, his jaw set in a grim line, looking out at the advancing Shadowfang tide. He was losing. "Jax!" she cried, her voice hoarse, pushing through the desperate defenders. She had to make him understand because her life, his life, everything depended on it. "I told you, it's Seraphina. She's with Rorik. She planned this." She thrust the Shadowfang bird, retrieved from her pocket, towards him. "This is her proof. She wants your territory. She never loved you." The words tumbled out, desperate and raw. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might shatter. He turned, and the fury in his golden eyes was a physical blow, colder than any ice. "Enough of your lies!" he roared, his voice like a physical whip. He didn't even glance at the bird. "You are her blood. Your convenient warnings, your sudden ferocity, it's all part of the game, isn't it? She fled, and you took her place. A willing puppet." He didn't accuse her of complicity. He outright believed it. His gaze stripped her bare, leaving her feeling utterly exposed, utterly betrayed. She felt it, clear as day, the crushing weight of his mistrust. It was a searing wound. He blamed her. Because of that, her deepest fear, that her true nature, even when revealed for good, would only lead to rejection, seemed to be coming true. She tried to reach for him to plead. "No, Jax, please, you don't understand." But then, he recoiled as if her touch burned him. "I understand enough," he growled, his voice thick with pain and resentment. He looked at her, truly looked, and she saw the devastating conclusion in his eyes. He thought she was just like Seraphina, another betrayer. A beat later, he turned his back on her, a chilling, definitive dismissal. He left her standing there, alone amidst the groans of the wounded, the screams of battle, and the crushing weight of his condemnation. Her plea died on her lips. She was isolated, abandoned, caught between two warring forces, both of whom now saw her as the enemy. The ultimate sting of betrayal had come not from her sister, but from the man she had come to love. The cacophony of battle, once deafening, now seemed distant, a dull, relentless roar. Elara stumbled through the smoke-filled corridors, her body aching, her spirit shattered. She found herself in a hidden, desolate corner of the fortress, a forgotten alcove, where the sounds of the invasion were muffled but not silenced. She sank to the cold stone floor, the dagger slipping from her numb fingers. All hope seemed to drain out of her like blood from a wound. Her father had forced her here, Seraphina had betrayed her, and Jax, the man she had risked everything for, the man who had ignited an unwelcome, undeniable fire within her, believed she was a liar, a co-conspirator. The very strength she had finally allowed to surface had been misinterpreted, used against her. It's always been this way, she thought, a bitter, icy clarity. Her true self, her fierce, rebellious spirit, had always been a liability, a secret she had to keep locked away. This was the consequence of finally letting it out. Her core misbelief, nurtured since childhood, screamed at her now. Tears, hot and stinging, tracked paths through the grime and sweat on her face. What was the point? To fight for a man who despised her? To save a clan that saw her as the twin of their betrayer? The fortress was falling. She could feel it in the tremors underfoot, hear it in the diminishing roars of Bloodmoon resistance. Her all-is-lost moment had arrived, heavy and absolute. She didn't know what to do. There was no plan, no hope, no one to turn to. Just like that, the crushing weight of despair threatened to consume her entirely. She closed her eyes, wishing for the silence to truly swallow her. But then, a faint, desperate cry cut through the muffled din, a child's whimper, followed by the terrified yelp of a young warrior's mate. It was nearby, raw with fear. It was the sound of innocence caught in the crossfire, a stark contrast to her internal desolation. Her eyes snapped open. The whimper, small and vulnerable, struck a chord deep within her, shaking her from her self-pity. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was something more primal. That whimpering sound, raw and pure, stirred something deep within her, a primal urge to protect. She didn't know what scared her more, her despair, or the realization that she still had something to lose. Elara pushed herself up, her body protesting, her heart aching, but a new, cold fire, born not of hope but of sheer, unadulterated fury, ignited in her gut. She would not let innocence suffer, not while she still drew breath. And just like that, everything changed. The fight was far from over. The child's whimper, thin and terrified, sliced through Elara's despair like a blade. It wasn't the sound of battle that jolted her, but that raw, innocent plea for safety. For so long, she had believed her true self, her ferocity, her rebellious heart, was a burden, a dangerous secret to keep hidden. Her father had instilled it, her diplomatic upbringing reinforced it, and even her sister's duplicity had seemed to prove it. But now, in the face of absolute destruction, the illusion shattered. Her carefully constructed cage of docility crumbled into dust. She felt it, clear as day, a profound realization blooming in the pit of her stomach. This fierce spirit wasn't a weakness, it was her only weapon. It was the very essence of who she was, the strength that had allowed her to endure every indignity, every betrayal. Maybe it was fate that forced her into this impossible position, because it finally gave her something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. She saw Jax, a whirlwind of muscle and determination, battling against overwhelming odds. He was losing, and his pain, his furious struggle, ignited a protective fire within her. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, he had seen her, truly seen her, in glimpses, in her quick wit, in her subtle defiance, in that stolen moment of forbidden passion. He might have cast her aside now, accusing her, but that didn't diminish the connection that had sparked between them, a bond forged in fire, not in the stars. She wouldn't let him fall. Not like this. A growl, low and primal, rose in her throat, unfamiliar, yet utterly right. Her wolf, suppressed for so long, pressed forward, and she let it happen. She pushed herself up from the cold floor, every muscle protesting, but driven by a new, cold fury that was terrifyingly exhilarating. Her eyes, usually so guarded, now blazed with an untamed fire, reflecting the savage determination she had finally unleashed. Her breath caught, not from fear, but from the sheer, raw power surging through her veins. She felt lighter, unburdened. This wasn't hope, not yet. This was pure, unadulterated resolve. This was a choice. She looked around, her gaze sweeping over the discarded weapons of fallen warriors. Her world tilted. She found a heavy, double-bladed axe, its edge gleaming, and she gripped it. Its weight felt right, balanced in her hands. She would fight. Not for her father's peace, not for a false destiny, but for the life of the man she had come to love, and for the people he fought to protect. This was the climb back, forged in the crucible of her despair. With the axe clutched tight, Elara burst from the alcove, a shadow moving through the chaos. Her movements, once graceful and controlled, were now raw and efficient, driven by instinct. She didn't think. She simply reacted, her body moving with a surprising, brutal fluidity. The sounds of battle roared around her, but her focus narrowed, sharp as the axe blade. She was heading towards Jax, towards the heart of the resistance. As she plunged into the fray, she encountered a small group of Bloodmoon warriors cornered by 3 hulking Shadowfang. These were not just any warriors. She recognized them, the ones who had shown her tentative respect after her subtle acts of defiance, the ones who had witnessed her quiet observations. They were battered, their faces grim, but their eyes still held a spark of defiance. "Fall back! To the North Tower!" Elara barked, her voice low but clear, cutting through the din. It wasn't a question or a suggestion, it was a command born of instinct. Her eyes, blazing with an inner fire, met theirs. For a split second they hesitated, surprised by her sudden ferocity, the sheer authority in her tone. But then, as they saw the raw determination in her gaze, the primal strength emanating from her, they understood. Her wolf pressed forward, and they sensed it. Without another word, they moved, falling in behind her. Elara, her mind racing with a tactical brilliance she hadn't known she possessed, assessed the immediate situation. The Shadowfang were pressing too hard on the northern flank, trying to cut off an escape route. "We draw them out!" she yelled, swinging her axe in a wide, devastating arc, forcing one of the Shadowfang to stumble. "Break their line!" With every step she took, Elara fought with a ferocity that stunned even her own allies. She moved like a storm, a whirlwind of silver and steel. She parried, she dodged, she struck, her movements seamless, surprising herself with every precise block and powerful swing. She protected her small band, a shield made of sheer will. Not only that, but her actions created a crucial diversion, pulling several Shadowfang away from the main Bloodmoon defenses. This was her strength, raw and untamed, finally unleashed. It was a new kind of power. She felt the shift in the battle, a subtle ripple in the chaos. Her small group, following her lead, carved a path. She was not merely surviving, she was fighting, leading. She felt it, clear as day, the subtle hum of shared purpose with these warriors who had accepted her. They were buying Jax's precious time. And then, through the smoke and the screams, she saw him, Jax, cornered, and fighting desperately against Rorik and a circle of elite Shadowfang guards. The air thickened around them, heavy with the scent of blood, fear, and the metallic tang of clashing steel. Elara, a whirlwind of furious motion, cut a path through the remaining Shadowfang. Her axe, a brutal extension of her will, moved with devastating precision. Her newfound allies, a fierce few, fought beside her, their trust forged in the heat of battle. Her gaze was locked on Jax, who was now barely holding his own against Rorik's brutal, relentless attacks. "Jax!" she roared, her voice raw, primal, cutting through the din. She launched herself forward, a blur of motion. Rorik, distracted for a split second, turned his massive head. That was all Elara needed. Her axe swept in, a wicked arc that forced him to stumble back, giving Jax a precious moment of respite. She planted herself beside Jax, back to back, their breathing ragged, their movements a seamless, deadly dance. She parried a blow meant for his head, then spun, protecting his flank as he delivered a bone-shattering strike. They moved as one, an unspoken language flowing between them, a terrifying synchronization forged in the crucible of war. Elara felt it, clear as day. The primal thrill of fighting alongside him, for him, a connection deeper than any fated bond could ever hope to be. Her soul answered. With every heartbeat, her determination solidified. She wasn't just his replacement. She was his shield, his sword, his unexpected anchor in the storm. As if fate demanded it, their eyes met across the chaos, a shared understanding burning between them.
He was fading. Rorik's strength was immense, his tactics ruthless. Each blow took a piece of him. The loss of his fated mate, the perceived betrayal, the relentless siege, it was all weighing him down. He roared, parrying another brutal strike, but he knew this couldn't last. Then a flash of silver, a whirlwind of furious motion. A growl rose in his throat, not of anger, but of stunned disbelief. Elara. She was here, fighting, not with the hesitant movements of a sheltered diplomat's daughter, but with the ruthless precision of a Bloodmoon warrior. Her axe moved with devastating speed, deflecting a fatal blow aimed at his throat. She was a revelation, fierce and beautiful in her battle fury. "Stay behind me," he roared, but then she spun, covering his exposed back, her smaller frame moving with impossible speed. He saw the fire in her eyes, the sheer determination. She wasn't fighting for duty, she was fighting for him. His senses, heightened by battle, picked up her unique scent. Not Seraphina's, but something wilder, deeper, more resonant. A beat later, he understood. His fated mate was a lie. The true connection, the true queen, stood by his side, forged in the fires of loyalty and an unexpected savage bargain. His heart skipped. As the bond pulsed between them, a profound realization washed over him. The woman he had scorned, the one he believed a traitor, was his salvation. He fought with renewed vigor, a primal roar tearing from his chest, now fighting not just for his clan, but for the powerful, undeniable woman at his side. The stage was set for the ultimate showdown.
The air thickened, electric with the tension of the final confrontation. Elara and Jax stood side by side, battered but unbowed, facing Seraphina and Rorik. The sounds of the retreating Shadowfang clan were faint now, because their leaders were trapped, cornered. Elara felt Jax's raw power beside her, a steady anchor, but also his unspoken question, the doubt that still flickered in his eyes about Seraphina's true nature. This was her moment to lay bare the truth. "Seraphina!" Alara's voice, usually soft, now resonated with a fierce authority that surprised even herself. "Your charade ends here. You never loved him. You only coveted his power." She stepped forward, brandishing the wooden Shadowfang bird, its crude carving a damning symbol. "This is your mark. This is proof of your treachery with Rorik. You didn't flee for freedom. You plotted for conquest, because you wanted to steal what was never yours by right." Her words, raw and unyielding, ripped through the tense silence, carrying across the stunned faces of the remaining warriors, both Bloodmoon and Shadowfang. Seraphina's elegant mask fractured, revealing a viper's fury. "Lies! She's a jealous imposter, Jax. She manipulated you!" she shrieked, appealing directly to him, her eyes blazing with a desperate, venomous light. "Is she?" Elara countered, her gaze locking onto Jax's, willing him to see. "Remember the warnings I gave you? The ones you dismissed? While you mourned a false mate, I was uncovering the truth, because my loyalty was never given to a lie." The pain of his earlier dismissal fueled her resolve. "Your fated mate conspired to assassinate you, Jax. She never wanted your heart, she wanted your head on a pike and your territory beneath her heel." Rorik, seeing their plan exposed, roared and lunged at Jax. Simultaneously, Seraphina, a wild, enraged glint in her eyes, lunged at Elara, a hidden dagger flashing. "You ruined everything!" she screamed. Elara didn't flinch. Her body moved on instinct, years of suppressed ferocity erupting. She blocked the dagger with her axe handle, then spun, bringing the blunt end of the axe down on Seraphina's wrist. The dagger clattered to the stone. Seraphina cried out, a sound of pain and utter defeat. Elara disarmed her, then pinned her, her axe head resting inches from her twin's throat, her gaze unwavering.
His mind reeled. Elara's words, sharp and undeniable, cut through the last vestiges of his self-deception. The wooden bird, the detailed accusation, Seraphina's desperate, venomous denial. And then, watching Elara, his demure diplomat, move with such lethal grace, disarming her twin with chilling precision, it was a revelation. His fated mate was a betrayer. The woman he had scorned, the one he had doubted, was his true protector. He saw it all then, her courage, her loyalty, her untamed spirit that mirrored his own. His heart ached with a profound, terrifying clarity. Camilla, the name of his past, died in his mind, replaced by Elara. He roared, a primal, liberated sound, and brought Rorik down with a single furious strike, ending the fight. He turned to Elara, his eyes blazing, no longer with anger but with a dawning, powerful love. The central question of his life was answered. Fate hadn't chosen for him. His true queen had been forged in fire. The battle's clamor faded, replaced by the hushed sounds of a clan tending its wounds. Wounded warriors were carried away, their moans mingling with the quiet cries of exhausted relief. The Bloodmoon Clan stood victorious, but battered, their fortress scarred. Jax knelt beside Rorik's unconscious form, then looked up at Elara, who still held Seraphina pinned. The air between them, once thick with tension, now thrummed with a different kind of intensity. A profound, undeniable understanding. He stood moving towards Elara with slow, deliberate steps. The fight had taken its toll, but a new light shone in his eyes. He saw the cold fury in Alara's face, the unwavering resolve, and knew, with absolute certainty, that she was his. Not by a mark of fate, but by her unwavering choice. He looked down at Seraphina, lying broken at Elara's feet, and the bitter sorrow for his perceived fated mate finally died, replaced by a cold disgust. Seraphina was exiled, stripped of all rank and ties, sent to wander the desolate wilds, a fitting punishment for a soul so barren of loyalty. Justice was swift, because the clan needed to heal. He reached Elara, his hand gently taking the axe from her grasp, his fingers brushing hers. "Elara," he murmured, his voice rough. "You saved us all. You saved me." His thumb brushed the mark on her neck, no longer a symbol of forced alliance, but a testament to their shared battle, their undeniable bond. He turned to his exhausted clan, his voice booming with authority, yet laced with a new kind of resonance. "Witness her. She is not the fated mate of legend, but the true Luna, forged in the fires of loyalty and courage. She chose us. She fought for us. She is my queen." A roar of approval rose from the Bloodmoon warriors, not just out of obedience, but genuine respect. It was an earned acclamation, a powerful acceptance.
Elara felt the weight of Jax's words, the profound trust in his gaze. Her own emotions were a tumultuous storm, relief washing over her like a warm tide, exhaustion threatening to pull her under, and a bittersweet ache for the sister she had lost to darkness. But beneath it all, a burgeoning joy, sharp and undeniable, bloomed in her chest. This was acceptance. This was home. She looked at the weary but triumphant faces of the Bloodmoon warriors, their eyes now holding respect instead of suspicion. She had earned her place here. Her transformation was complete. The immediate consequences of the climax were addressed, but the journey to their new reality was just beginning. Weeks later, life within the Bloodmoon fortress settled into a new rhythm, one infused with a hard-won peace and an unshakable bond. The scars of battle remained on the fortress walls, but they were now badges of honor, testaments to their resilience. Elara walked the halls, no longer a ghost or a prisoner, but as Luna, a title earned through fire and blood. She still wore elegant gowns, but now with her head held high, her fierce spirit no longer suppressed but celebrated. She collaborated with Jax, offering insights gleaned from her diplomatic past, but tempered with the pragmatism of the wild. She helped organize recovery efforts, mediated minor disputes, and offered quiet counsel, her intelligence respected, her strength admired. Her relationship with Jax was a powerful, untamed force. Their connection wasn't rooted in some mythical destiny, but in raw honesty, mutual respect, and a passion that burned hotter precisely because it was chosen. He was still the savage alpha, formidable and protective, but his eyes held a tenderness she had never thought possible. His growl, once a sound of warning, now often rumbled with affection. He relied on her, consulted her, saw her as an equal. She felt it, clear as day. The profound love that pulsed between them, a deep, abiding connection that transcended words. Their intimacy was a dance of power and surrender, a symphony of touch and unspoken understanding. Every shared glance, every lingering touch, every quiet moment by the roaring fire in his study was a testament to a love forged in the fires of betrayal and an unexpected, savage bargain. One crisp morning, Elara stood with Jax on the highest battlement of the fortress, the wind whipping through her hair, strong and free. Below them, the Bloodmoon Clan moved with purpose, rebuilding, growing stronger. The vast, untamed mountains stretched before them, majestic and eternal. Was there another choice? She mused aloud, her voice soft, recalling the desperate question that had haunted her for so long. She turned to Jax, her heart full. He took her hand, his large, scarred fingers intertwining with hers. His thumb brushed over the sensitive skin of her neck, right over the now faded but permanent mark he had given her. It no longer represented a forced claim, but an unbreakable vow. "No," he rumbled, his voice deep with conviction, his golden eyes locking onto hers. There was only this. Our path was forged. Their gazes held, a silent testament to a love that defied fate, a bond built on loyalty, sacrifice, and the wild, untamed hearts that chose each other. She had come as a sacrifice, a replacement, and found her truest self, her deepest love, and her destined place not in the stars, but in the heart of a savage alpha who became her everything. Her soul answered. And just like that, everything changed. Their shared future, boundless and wild, stretched before them. A testament to a love undeniably earned. Epilogue. Years blurred into a tapestry woven with strength and fierce, undeniable love. The scars on the Bloodmoon fortress walls, once symbols of invasion, now stood as proud testaments to resilience, much like the subtle lines etched around Jax's eyes. Elara walked these halls not as a replacement, but as Luna, a title she had carved out with blood, courage, and a spirit finally set free. Her gowns, no longer a disguise, draped over a body honed by the demands of a fierce clan. Her head always held high because she had nothing left to hide. She worked tirelessly alongside Jax, her diplomatic mind, once a burden, now a powerful asset. She helped broker peace with wary neighboring clans, her calm demeanor masking a sharp intellect that few dared to challenge. She helped rebuild, nurture, and grow their people, channeling her once-suppressed ferocity into fierce protection. What followed was a thriving community, robust and loyal, all thanks to the strength forged in fire. Her bond with Jax was a living, breathing entity, raw, untamed, and utterly profound. It was a love built not on ancient prophecies or predestined marks, but on shared battles, on trust earned in the face of betrayal, and on a passion that burned with the intensity of twin stars colliding. He was still the savage Alpha, formidable and protective, his presence a powerful anchor. But his golden eyes, once cold as winter ice, now held a warmth, a tenderness reserved only for her. His low growl, once a warning, now often rumbled with affection, a sound that reverberated deep within her soul. He relied on her, his instincts trusting her counsel implicitly. He saw her, truly saw her, not as the twin of his betrayer, but as his true equal, his indispensable partner. Because of that, their connection was a testament to choice, to two broken souls finding wholeness in each other.
She often remembered the suffocating weight of her old life, the constant suppression. How distant it seemed now. How could she have lived like that, denying the very essence of her being? This new life, this earned love, was everything she hadn't known she craved. She felt it, clear as day, the profound peace that settled over her, a deep, resonant joy that transcended all past pain. Their intimacy was a symphony of power and surrender, a constant reaffirmation of the choice they had made. Every shared glance, every lingering touch, every quiet moment by the roaring hearth in his study cemented the truth. Fate had merely presented the opportunity. They had forged the destiny. One crisp morning, Elara stood with Jax on the highest battlement of the fortress, the wind whipping through her hair, wild and invigorating. Below them, the Bloodmoon Clan moved with purpose, strong and united. The vast, untamed mountains stretched before them, majestic and eternal, promising an endless future. Was there another choice? She mused aloud, her voice soft, recalling the desperate question that had haunted her when her life had fractured. She turned to Jax, her heart full, her eyes mirroring the wild freedom of the landscape. He took her hand, his large, scarred fingers intertwining with hers. His thumb brushed over the sensitive skin of her neck, tracing the now faded but indelible mark he had given her. It no longer represented a forced claim, but an unbreakable vow, a symbol of their shared crucible. "No," he rumbled, his voice deep with conviction, his golden eyes locking onto hers, filled with an ancient, fierce love. There was only this. Our path was forged. Their gazes held, a silent testament to a love that defied all expectations, a bond built on loyalty, sacrifice, and the wild, untamed hearts that chose each other against all odds. Her soul answered. And just like that, everything changed. Their shared future, boundless and glorious, stretched before them, a testament to a love undeniably earned, a destiny truly their own.